The committee meets today to hear testimony on the deployment of National Guardsmen domestically to assist with immigration enforcement and to help restore law and order in our cities. I welcome three witnesses today. We are joined by Mr. Charles Young, the Principal Deputy General Counsel for the Department of Defense. We have Mr. Roosevelt Ditlevson, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and America's Security Affairs, and we will hear from General Gregory M. Gio, Commander of the United States Northern Command. In recent years, violent crime, rioting, drug trafficking, and heinous gang activity have steadily escalated. The Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Statistics has released data on these trends. According to the Bureau's National Crime Victimization Survey, the rate of violent crime in urban areas increased by 61% from 2019 to 2024, 61%. Last year, the rate of violent crime in urban areas was 46% higher than the national rate, and it was 104% higher than the rural rate. The statistics are clear. Public safety is at risk in our cities, and we are in need of well-supported and effective law enforcement. This situation was made all the worse during the Biden administration. We saw widespread efforts by Democrats to defund the police. These moves constricted law enforcement effectiveness across the nation. For one example, consider Seattle in 2020. Hundreds of violent protesters took over several downtown blocks. They declared it a police-free zone and demanded that the police budget be cut in half. And apparently it did become a police-free zone. In the absence of all police presence, violence, open drug usage, and shootings escalated. All the while, the city's elected officials did little to stop the chaos. This is but one example of what happens without sufficient law and order. Now, I would be remiss at this time if I did not recognize that in trying to restore that law and order, there are costs. In particular, I'm reminded of the two West Virginia National Guard members who were shot in this city just before the Thanksgiving holiday. Today, we remember Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who lost her life, and we grieve with her loved ones. Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf remains hospitalized, but is showing signs of progress, and we likewise pray for his swift recovery. The public sees these examples of crime in their communities, and they expect more from their government. They demand and deserve action. For this reason, President Trump ordered an immediate and coordinated response by deploying the National Guard to some of our nation's most dangerous cities. These strategic deployments are not only appropriate but essential. Current crime rates in our largest cities have become a substantial burden on local and federal law enforcement agencies. Increasingly, these agencies are unable to keep our communities safe. They are underfunded and stretched thin, unable to reinstitute law and order on their own. The Guard is uniquely suited to assist with the fight against crime. It can provide manpower, resources, and specialized expertise that local police departments may lack. Additionally, National Guard units are trained for rapid deployment. They're versatile, able to handle large-scale public safety operations and provide immediate relief to communities in need. In fact, the National Guard has a strong history of assisting in domestic law enforcement during times of national crisis. Their expertise in crowd control, search and rescue operations, and logistical support makes them well suited for urban environments struggling with crime-related violence. Not surprisingly, Democratic governors and left-wing pundits have decried these deployments. They've raised concerns about violations of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the use of military for domestic policing, except in specific circumstances. Others have said these deployments waste money and reduce troop readiness. These concerns are both manufactured and misguided, in my judgment. Mobilizing the Guard is an excellent opportunity for units to enhance cohesion, complete mission essential tasks, and ensure training is complete. Moreover, Guardsmen operate with the highest degree of professionalism. They serve purely in support roles, never crossing the line into law enforcement functions. They are limited to protecting federal employees and federal buildings, providing logistics and communications to law enforcement operations, and most importantly, to providing a visible security presence, which supports law enforcement and deters crime. Furthermore, all National Guardsmen serving in our cities operate under the standing rules of the use of force. These rules prohibit the use of force except in instances of self-defense. All Guardsmen receive extensive training on these rules. I'm confident in their ability to operate within them. I'm proud of the Guardsmen serving in our nation's capital and in cities throughout America. I thank them for their service and sacrifice and for their commitment to restoring law and order. Every day they help Americans feel safe in their communities. With that, I turn to my colleague, Senator Duckworth. And Senator Duckworth, I hope your voice is in better shape than mine this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also thank you to Ranking Member Reed, again, Chairman Wicker, and Leader Thune for working with me to hold this meeting. I first want to acknowledge the horrific shooting in D.C., as the Chairman has already acknowledged, resulting in the tragic death of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and injury of Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. These heroes served with honor and showed up to do the mission despite the risks, as our service members always do. It is a tragedy that never should have happened in the first place. That is exactly why I led my colleagues to push for this hearing. Military service involves risks, and our service members accept those risks knowingly, selflessly. So we better be damn sure that the mission is the right one. That it is a clear and effective mission, that it serves our national security. If we stand by while this administration pursues another irresponsible, open-ended campaign with no defined mission, no clear authorities, no set timeline, and no transparent end state, we fail our troops. We fail their families, and we fail the American people. Today, we must shine a light on the cost of these domestic deployments to the American people and to those who wear the uniform of this great nation. I look forward to getting answers about where this administration's crusade of misusing the military in American cities is going, and hearing how anyone can justify the damage it is doing to our service members, to civil rights, our public trust in the military, and our service members' ability to execute their critical war-fighting missions. Look, one of the proudest moments in my life was when the first time I ever raised my hand to swear my oath to the Constitution as a member of the Illinois Army National Guard. I cherished every day, every single day that I got to call myself a soldier. And it's because I love our military so deeply that I refuse to let anyone, including the president, abuse it for their own gain. Right now, thousands of troops are deployed across the country under false pretenses. Here in D.C., the National Guard has been performing missions that don't help with their military training, like spreading mulch and picking up trash, but that, as we have sadly seen, nonetheless carry risk for our service members. Let me be clear, safety in our community is paramount, but these deployments do not make our streets safer. They do not keep our families more secure. In fact, it is just the opposite. Instead, President Trump has taken our troops away from their core mission just to do his personal bidding, forcing them to patrol tourist areas in D.C. or invade a city where residents are peacefully protesting his inhumane policies. We know Trump's actions are not about so-called law and order. If he cared about law and order, he wouldn't have quite literally defunded our police by freezing and slashing federal dollars that help to hire, train, and equip law enforcement. If this administration cared about law and order, it would not be ignoring the growing number of judges, including those appointed by Trump himself, who've deemed these deployments illegal. In Illinois, a judge from the Northern District found that DHS's account of the situation on the ground, and I quote, was simply unreliable, end quote. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, in a 3-judge panel that featured 2 Republican-appointed judges, including a Trump appointee, upheld this view that, and I quote, the facts do not justify the president's action, end quote. These judges went further, explaining that political opposition is not rebellion, and reaffirming that First Amendment activity in Illinois is not the sort of threat that would justify a military deployment. Similarly, another Trump-appointed federal judge, this time in Oregon, wrote that the administration had no credible evidence that the protests had gotten out of control and that the president's basis for deploying the Guard was untethered to the facts. Our troops deserve to know why they are being asked to do such legally unprecedented and deeply unpopular things on American soil. And make no mistake, this is deeply unpopular. Most Americans don't want this. Poll after poll has found that a majority of Americans oppose deploying troops for missions that should be handled by law enforcement. This all raises a core question for our hearing today. Why is this administration so focused on turning our military against Americans here at home? Our military's #1 priority must be readiness. We face real growing threats from China, Russia, Iran, and more bad actors on a global stage. The Department of Defense needs to be laser focused on preparing our troops to defend America's interests abroad, not performing tasks that are meant to be done by civilian law enforcement here at home. No one else can do the critical work of keeping our families safe from these actual threats. And our troops are already stretched thin for time and resources. Yet these deployments are burning priceless readiness, morale, and resources on open-ended, unjustified missions. So far, this administration is estimated to have spent over $341.3 million on the deployments to Illinois, LA, Oregon, DC, and Memphis alone, not including the cost of thousands of troops along the border. But these costs are tabulated in more than taxpayer dollars and cannot be overstated, nor can the risk that comes with politicizing our troops for one man's gain. So let me close with this. Enabling the president, any president, to send military troops into American cities under transparently flimsy pretexts to meet his whims will have a dangerous and profoundly damaging impact on our nation's military. Our heroes did not sign up for this. They signed up to defend Americans' rights to free speech, not to intimidate Americans from exercising that right. They were willing to die to defend this country, not to defend one man's partisan agenda. We cannot stay silent as our troops' willingness to sacrifice is abused, or as President Trump erodes the hard-won trust our military has earned from the American public. Because while our armed forces have a sacred role in our country, public trust can be easily lost when the Commander-in-Chief uses them so recklessly, especially when that Commander-in-Chief has already gone so far as to suggest that the military uses American cities as, and I quote, training grounds for, again, I quote the president, the war within. Look, these days I may no longer be wearing my Army uniform, but it is still hanging up in my closet. But as a senator and as a member of this committee, my core mission remains the same as when I was in the National Guard, to keep America as strong and as safe as she should be. The power to deploy our troops domestically must remain exceptional, accountable, and rooted in law, not in one man's judgment about what constitutes disorder. So that's why I'm here today. That's why I'm so outraged. That is why I am so determined to make sure that, for the sake of our troops, we get some answers today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Let me observe that my Air Force uniform is also hanging up in my closet, but there's no way I could get into it at this point. Let me just mention for the purposes of our audience that these three witnesses were chosen by the leadership of this committee by consensus, and we welcome them here today. Mr. Ditlevson, your opening statement, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Department of War's role in supporting Homeland Defense, particularly regarding the mobilization of the National Guard. As the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of War for Homeland Defense and America's Security Affairs, I oversee the policies and plans related to these missions, and I welcome the opportunity to brief you today. The Trump administration has taken every available opportunity to restore law and order in the United States. To that end, the department has reinvested in its relationship with our federal, state, and local partners to strengthen safety within our country. Americans must know that they can walk home at night, that they can take their children to the playground, that they can exist without fear of being attacked. President Trump promised law and order. And through his fearless leadership, he is delivering. Promises made, promises kept. The Department of War, and specifically the National Guard, plays a crucial role in responding to a variety of domestic challenges, from protecting federal facilities and personnel to supporting law enforcement and disaster relief efforts. The importance of the National Guard in this mission comes straight from the top. Secretary Hegseth, a decorated former member of the D.C. National Guard, is ardent and steadfast in the critical role the National Guard plays in supporting law enforcement and keeping the American people safe. Our efforts are guided by a comprehensive legal and policy framework undergirded, most importantly, by the Constitution of the United States. We prioritize strict adherence to legal parameters in all of our activities while faithfully executing the President and Secretary's direction. To do otherwise would jeopardize good order and discipline and would be dangerous and irresponsible. Recent executive orders and presidential memorandums have directed DoW to provide specific support in several key areas. Currently, the National Guard is deployed in several states under both Title 10 and Title 32 authorities, providing support for a diverse set of missions, including federal protection missions in California, Illinois, and Oregon, support to federal law enforcement in Tennessee, and restoring law and order in our nation's capital. We are committed to ensuring that all National Guard personnel are properly trained and equipped for these missions. Every single service member undergoes specialized training before being entrusted with the duty to protect American citizens. We emphasize de-escalation techniques, respect for civil liberties, and adherence to the rules for the use of force. We also work closely with state governments and other federal agencies to ensure a coordinated and effective response to domestic challenges. The Department of War understands the concerns surrounding the use of National Guard in domestic operations. We are committed to transparency and accountability in all of our activities. We strive to balance readiness for both domestic and overseas missions, adapting our training and resourcing to meet evolving needs. My office is committed to ensuring that these resources are used effectively and responsibly, as we have throughout President Trump's time in office. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dillifson. Mr. Young, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of this committee, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on the important topic of National Guard mobilizations. The overarching concern in all of our National Guard deployments is to ensure that our communities remain safe places where our citizens can enjoy their constitutionally protected rights in peace, and where federal officers can perform their valid federal functions without fear of being physically harmed. When the Department of War receives a presidential mobilization order, Supreme Court precedents requires that we presume that he exercised his statutory and constitutional authorities as the Commander-in-Chief in a manner consistent with the law. These lawful orders, given in exigent circumstances, requires the Department of War to rapidly muster a response to prevent loss of life, of limb, and property in emergency situations. The Department issues carefully tailored guidance to commanders and mobilized National Guard personnel, focusing their mission on the protection of federal functions, personnel, and property. In doing so, the Department has operated well within the law established by longstanding Supreme Court precedent and longstanding Department of Justice legal opinions. The Department of War has also received, evaluated, and responded to numerous requests for assistance from the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice under well-established statutory frameworks for assisting other federal agencies in performing their federal functions and in assisting state and local law enforcement authorities. The dedicated women of our National Guard have selflessly stepped forward to heed the call of duty and have served our nation with distinction. From all reports, they are well received by the citizens they serve and have comported themselves in an exemplary manner. As a result of their service, our communities are safer. Our federal law enforcement officers can more safely perform their legal functions, and obstructions to the proper execution of federal laws are being removed. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you very, very much. And now, General Guillot, you are welcomed here and recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and the distinguished members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to appear today alongside Mr. Ditlevson and Mr. Young regarding the deployments of the National Guard in Title X status within the United States. I'd like to start by acknowledging the essential role of the Army and Air National Guard teammates play in defending the homeland every day. Right now, Guardsmen under the command and control of NORAD and U.S. NORTHCOM are defending against ballistic missile threats, protecting national airspace, supporting federal law enforcement, and helping seal and repel illegal activity at the southern border. In fact, there isn't a single NORAD or U.S. NORTHCOM mission that doesn't rely on our National Guard teammates. I'll center my comments this morning on United States Northern Command's roles and responsibilities in commanding and controlling Title X forces conducting the Federal Protection Mission in support of federal law enforcement agencies. At the direction of the President and the Secretary of War, Army National Guard personnel operating in Title X status are tasked with protecting federal functions, which includes property, entities, and federal personnel performing federal functions, including enforcement of federal law in California, Oregon, and Illinois. There are also currently 200 National Guard personnel in Title X status at Fort Bliss, Texas, who are available for this mission if necessary. The assigned forces in all 4 locations operate under the command and control of U.S. NORTHCOM while reporting to U.S. Army North. This provides a unified command structure that ensures disciplined execution of the assigned missions and clear accountability. Accountability and adherence to all applicable laws and policies are critical, and U.S. NORTHCOM will continue to comply with all laws, regulations, and applicable court orders. In adherence with federal court rulings, personnel in Oregon and Illinois remain federalized on Title X status, but are not executing the Federal Protection Operational Mission. Meanwhile, 100 service members in California in Title X status are executing the Federal Protection Mission in accordance with a stay issued by the Ninth Circuit as litigation continues to progress. NORTHCOM is in coordination with the department regarding the order issued yesterday by the District Court in California. From the outset, I've directed that every service member participating in federal protection missions be thoroughly trained on their authorities and limitations. It is essential that everyone involved in this mission understands precisely what they are authorized to do, but perhaps more importantly, what they are authorized not to do. To be clear, Title X forces are prohibited from conducting traditional law enforcement activities, including arrest, seizure, search, or evidence collection in connection with the enforcement of laws. Their mission is to take reasonable measures to protect the destruction or defacement of federal government property, including preventing civilians from attacking federal facilities, stopping ongoing interference with federal functions by civilians, or preventing civilians with a demonstrated intent to interfere with the federal functions from such interference. The mission also includes protecting federal personnel from harm or threat of death or bodily injury. As such, service members may temporarily restrain civilians, conduct cursory searches, or take other similar measures to ensure safety of the persons on the property. To date, only 1 civilian has been temporarily detained by military personnel. That occurred on June 13th when, despite verbal warnings, an individual crossed a clearly marked boundary surrounding the Wilshire Federal Building in Los Angeles. In accordance with applicable law and policies, that individual was only detained until they could be handed over to proper law enforcement personnel. Title X forces are present to protect federal property and federal personnel in the execution of their responsibility to enforce federal law, not to replace them. Local, state, and federal law enforcement remain fully responsible for public safety and policing, while the objectives of the military professionals performing this mission are safety and continuity of the federal functions, and, if necessary, de-escalation, not confrontation. I met a young Marine in Los Angeles this summer, and when I asked him to describe his assigned mission, he told me that it was to ensure that the American citizens exercising their right to peaceful assembly and protest were able to do so safely. I think that sums up both the mission and the professionalism of the service members assigned to this mission very well. The Federal Protection Mission is an example of the Department's unique capability to support partners during extraordinary circumstances. NORAD and U.S. NORTHCOM are proud of the command's ability to rapidly deploy trained, disciplined forces when and wherever they're needed, and the well-trained, professional, and ready National Guard is crucial to that effort. Again, I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General, and I think I'll start with you. Specifically, why bring the Guard in? What does it offer that law enforcement and other federal agencies cannot do?
First and foremost, Chairman, they are extremely disciplined, and they can very quickly be trained to conduct any mission that we task of them. When they come in, we train them on what they're authorized to do, which is rooted in the Mayday opinion and their 12406 authorities, and also the Secretary's directive action, which is to prevent destruction and defacement of the federal facilities and to protect the execution of federal functions. They can do that because they're disciplined, they're well-trained, and they very well understand the limits of their authorities.
Well, what are the benefits to the Guard? My first question was the benefits to the community and what they could bring, but what about the individuals that are being deployed? Or do they benefit from this also?
Yes, sir, they do. We work very closely with the tags from each state to ensure that the training they receive not only benefits them in their federal function that they're performing for us, but also in their state role. So in the conduct of the mission, they get not only training on the standing for the rules of use of force, and also the civil disturbance operations that they could potentially execute, but they get small unit training, they get all of their medical training complete, they get all of their weapons qualifications and many other small unit tactics that benefit them in both statuses. Also, at this time, the majority of those serving in this role are volunteers, so it helps them in their pursuit of a career. And then it also allows us to trade out people who are assigned but maybe have school or other functions to ensure that the people that are serving not only are very good at their job, but they want to be there, and they're there on voluntary status.
Mr. Young, you're the counsel in this panel. Tell us what the Posse Comitatus Act is and how this deployment, this type of deployment we're talking about today, does not violate the Posse Comitatus.
Thank you, Senator. The Posse Comitatus Act was an act that was passed not long after the Civil War that addressed concerns regarding the use of federal troops in conducting domestic law enforcement. Up to that point in our nation's history, there had been a long practice of using federalized troops domestically, and so Congress, in order to make sure that local officials were not able to gain the support or the use of federal troops in dealing with local circumstances, passed the Posse Comitatus Act. It essentially precludes the department and military personnel from being used in a manner that would pervade the local law enforcement and that would subject civilians to direct military authority. And over the course of time, the Department of Justice has analyzed that rule in relation to National Guard deployments. For the vast majority of National Guard deployments, they are considered to be non-federalized. Most of the time that the National Guard is used, they are used under the control, direction, and authority of their governors, and they are in either what is called a state active duty status, or they are in a federally funded but state-controlled status, which is otherwise called Title 32. In both of those circumstances, they are considered to be non-federalized. They're also considered to not be part of the Army. And while that is an important legal distinction, because therefore the Posse Comitatus Act prohibits any part of the Army from being used domestically, and therefore non-federalized National Guard have long been used to be able to conduct domestic law enforcement operations. And there's a very long-standing and consistent practice of using non-federalized National Guard, such as what's here in the district today and what's in Memphis as well today, are in Title 32. The other aspect is the authority of the President as the Article II authority to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed and to protect the sovereign, to be able to use federal forces, whether it be active component troops or whether it be National Guard personnel, to protect federal functions and property.
So just to nail this down, there are federal case law precedents that cause you to believe that what is being done currently is in accordance with federal law.
That's right, Senator, as well as long-established Department of Justice legal opinions that say that when federal functions property are at jeopardy, the Posse Comitatus Act does not limit the President's ability to be able to protect those functions.
All right, thank you so much. Senator Reed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. The National Guard has been deployed on numerous occasions, but these circumstances seem somewhat unique. And in addition to that, the Secretary of Defense has just ordered the National Guard to create a response force and a nationwide deployable quick reaction force. These forces, let me ask Mr. Dittleson, what is the purpose of these forces, Mr. Dittleson?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Ranking Member. These two situations, the National Guard Response Force and the National Guard Quick Response Force, are already pre-existing functions that are being reorganized and re-equipped to a higher level and modernized to be able to serve their functions better. So these are already existing capabilities within the National Guard, and we're just changing the manner in which they are task organized to be more effective.
So there's no change in mission?
There's no change in mission, that's correct.
So they have to respect the Posse Comitatus Act and not become enforcers of domestic law?
If they are employed in Title 10 status, that is correct, sir.
And Title 32 status would require the concurrence of the governor or not?
That is correct.
Okay. There is when this program was rolled out, Mr. Young, there was a suggestion that one of its main purposes is deterrence, which touches upon a basic right of Americans to come together peacefully and demonstrate in cities and towns across the country. But this deterrence effect, one could argue, could inhibit or is designed effectively to inhibit those assemblies. Would that be constitutional?
Mr. Ranking Member, thank you for the question. I think the presence of National Guard personnel at federal locations is designed to protect those federal property and functions from violence, from the threat of burning a building, of officers being harmed in the execution of their functions, or the impedance of those federal functions. Those functions do not impede in any way or deter people from exercising a valid constitutional right to protest. Obviously, people have protested throughout the history and course of our country in many ways. When they go beyond what is a legal protest and cross the line into violence against federal officials in the execution of that protest, the design for the deployment of these National Guard personnel is to simply protect the federal functions and the personnel that are being harmed.
So you would concur with Judge Breyer in California federal courts, who declared the actions of National Guard and other military as unconstitutional. I believe one of the areas that they were protecting was MacArthur Park, which is not a federal facility, or at least they were making sweeps through MacArthur Park. But you concur with Judge Breyer's conclusion that the President acted unconstitutionally?
No, Senator, I would say that I concur with the Ninth Circuit's decision that the President acted lawfully, and I disagree with the district court's decision. I respect the district court's decision, and it's my understanding that the actions in MacArthur Park were designed to protect the federal officers that were otherwise there, that were not uniformed military personnel, that were performing a valid legal federal function.
Thank you. General Guyot, first of all, thank you for your service and your very difficult job of maintaining a balance between your military responsibilities and many of the orders you're given. If you were, if the president declared an organization a terrorist organization or a DTO, which is on a secret list, and you were ordered to attack them on U.S. soil, would you carry out that order?
Senator Reed, as with any order I get, I would assess the order, consult the legal authorities to ensure that it was a lawful order, and I would, if I had questions, I would elevate that to the chairman and the secretary, as they welcome at all times. And if I had no concerns and I was confident in the lawful order, I would definitely execute that order.
You were at Quantico when the president addressed the officers.
I was, sir.
So he said there's an enemy within. And he also said